My purse isn't yours, I told her. But Natalie had already slipped the strap off my shoulder like she was taking a coat from a rack. You don't need this anymore, she said, voice neat as a receipt, eyes moving over my living room the way appraisers do, measured, impersonal. The purse hung from her hand, soft with years of use, the leather warmed by my skin. I watched her thumb the clasp. It clicked open, like a small door in my chest. Mom, I'm simplifying things, she went on. You get confused with bills. I'll handle the expenditures. She used the word expenditures as if we were in a boardroom and not in the house I painted with my late husband, the house where the kettle knows when to sing for two. She sifted through my wallet. Cards, folded grocery lists, the picture of Adam in his marching band uniform, a pharmacy punch card with one square left to stamp. She didn't see any of it. She saw numbers, leverage, the problem of me. Give it back, I said, calm, even. I've learned calm isn't weakness, it's control. She slid my debit card into her phone case anyway, like she was putting a stamp into a collection. We're done with the old system, she said. I've already talked to the bank. They know I'm family. A small lie wears perfume. A big lie smells like solvent. This one burned my nose. Tea's on, I said, moving toward the kitchen because I needed the motion. When your balance is stolen in front of you, you start looking for handles. The kettle popped its lid, a little sigh. I poured water over the leaves, steady hands, strong wrists that folded 1,000 shirts for a laundry fundraiser when Natalie was 13 and didn't want to go. Funny what stays. She followed me, purse tucked under her arm like a trophy. Coffee for me, she said, as if we were in a cafe and I was anyone but her mother. We'll go by the bank after this. I'll get the limits raised. I'll set alerts. I can't keep bailing you out every time you forget a password. I don't forget, I said. I choose. She didn't hear it. People hear only the pitch they're tuned to. I'm only doing this because I care, she said. And there it was. The cushion wrapped around the shove. You'll thank me when everything's streamlined. When water is forced into a narrow pipe, I said, it screams. The kettle made a thin sound just then, as if to back me up. I set a cup in front of her. She didn't touch it. She was all movement, notifications lighting her screen, messages from her husband, a photo of a lamp she wanted for their dining room. My purse sat between us, small and faithful. I sat. I took in my own house. Threadbare rug by the back door, the spider plant that refuses to die, the picture of Adam with his first car, beaming at a dent like it was a medal. I heard a bird testing notes on the gutter. Life kept moving in its humble gears while my daughter counted the teeth. Natalie, I said, and she glanced up. My girl is 48 and still doesn't hold a gaze for more than 3 seconds when she's doing something she shouldn't. We're not going to the bank together. She blinked, stared, then smiled the way you smile at a stubborn child. We are, she said. Don't make this difficult. Difficult is a word people use when their plan meets a spine, I said. Her smile twitched and died. Mom, enough. She stood, impatience drumming through her hands. You keep the house. I'll take the logistics. I'm signing on to everything. It's safer. You'll have an allowance. I'll make sure your prescriptions are filled. You can just... She fluttered her fingers, searching for something polite. Rest. I looked at those fingers. Polished. Quick. They have held diplomas, steering wheels, the hands of men she later left with clean breakups and tidy text messages. They have not, in a long time, held mine. You can leave my purse on the table, I said. We'll finish tea. She laughed, short and sharp. "You think I'm asking?" She slid the purse under her arm again, like contraband. "I'll be back at 3. Be ready." The door closed behind her with the flat sound of a stamp. Through the window, I watched her cross my little patch of lawn, the heels that make her taller than apologies, the hair I used to braid for recitals. She got into her car, answered a call without looking, and drove away. Silence sat down across from me. The tea had gone the color of old amber. I picked up the cup and drank, steady. Heat in the mouth wakes the rest of you. On the table, the pale ring from her untouched saucer looked like chalk around a body. I took the purse back from the chair where she'd set it last week. I emptied it gently. Coins, keys, the peppermints Adam steals. The card she'd slipped away, of course. But she'd missed one envelope tucked into the lining, the list of questions I'd written for the bank the night I woke and couldn't swallow the air. Beneficiaries, POAs, transfer limits, what to do if someone decides you are better managed than heard. The clock said 10:17. Morning light lay over the rug like washed linen. People think change feels like fireworks. At my age, it feels like folding a shirt well, corners square, fabric smooth, intention obvious. I put on my coat. I took the envelope. I left the cup in the sink, the spoon in the saucer, the kettle on its base. I locked the door, tested the handle, felt the click like a vow. Then I walked to the bus stop with my empty shoulder where a purse used to hang and my hands free for once in a long, long time. I didn't bother turning the light on when I woke up. The room was already filled with that pale morning gray that makes the edges of furniture blur. My purse was still where I'd left it on the dresser, the clasp a little loose from years of use. I'd meant to fix it. It was past 8 when I heard the front door open without knocking. Only one person in my life has that kind of confidence. Ava. She came in briskly, smelling of expensive perfume, her heels clicking against my worn floorboards. She didn't bother with a hello. Instead, she walked straight to my dresser, picked up my purse, and looked me dead in the eye. "You don't need this anymore," she said flatly. Not angry, not joking, just a cold fact in her mind. I sat up slowly, my joints reminding me that I am not 30 anymore. "Put it back." "You're 78, Mom," she continued as if I didn't know. "It's not safe for you to manage your own money. I've talked to Brian, and we think it's time I took over. You'll still have everything you need. We'll make sure of it." I'd heard that tone before, years ago, when she wanted to sell my late husband's truck. "It's not practical," she'd said then. Now she was using it on my life. "Leave it," I repeated. She sighed, the way a teacher sighs at a slow student. "Don't be stubborn. You could get scammed, or forget to pay bills. Let's make this easier for everyone." Her hand tightened on the strap. I realized then she wasn't here to talk. She was here to take. I stood up, slow but steady. "Ava, I'm going to make some tea. When I come back, I expect my purse to be where it was." She gave me a small smile, the kind that never reached her eyes. "You'll thank me later." I walked into the kitchen, put the kettle on, and picked up the phone. The bank answered on the second ring. "This is Margaret Henley. I'd like to close my primary account. Today." The clerk hesitated. "Mrs. Henley, that account has—" "Yes, I know exactly what it has. I'll be in before lunch to sign whatever you need. But until then, freeze it. All of it." A pause, then. "Understood, ma'am. We can temporarily block all transactions until your visit." "Good." I hung up. The kettle was still heating when I returned to the bedroom. The purse was gone. So was Ava. I was at the bank by 10. The morning air had that sharpness August sometimes carries, like it's warning you summer is nearly done. I stepped off the bus and stood for a moment on the sidewalk, letting the warmth from the bricks seep through my shoes. People hurried past, coffee cups, phones pressed to ears, all of them busy with their own concerns. Inside, the bank smelled faintly of polish and printer ink. A young teller with perfect eyeliner smiled without showing teeth. "How can I help you today, ma'am?" "I need to close my checking account," I said, "and move the funds somewhere safer." "Of course. Do you have your ID?" I handed over my driver's license. She typed for a moment, her nails clicking against the keys, then glanced at the screen. "It's a joint account with Ava Kent?" I nodded once. "There have been 2 withdrawals this week," she added carefully, her tone a shade softer. "Yesterday for $300 and this morning for $800. I felt my jaw tighten. That explained her confidence. "Freeze it now," I said, "and remove her authorization." The teller straightened. "We'll need your signature for that." "I'm ready." 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from Mr. Calder, the branch manager, a man in his 50s with silver hair that didn't quite match his young-looking face. He'd known my husband back when George used to come in to deposit cash from his side carpentry jobs. "I can move this into a single holder account immediately," he said. "But if you're worried about access, we could also place the funds into a trust in your name with a designated beneficiary." "Beneficiary?" "Someone you choose. The money wouldn't be available well, until you're gone. But you could still draw from it while you're alive. It prevents other parties from interfering." I thought of Adam, my grandson, who comes by on Sundays without asking for anything more than a slice of pie. I thought of how his hands shake when he's excited, just like George's did. "I want Adam Lane as the beneficiary," I said, "and I want it airtight. No one else gets access." Mr. Calder nodded. "We'll have our legal department prepare the paperwork. Do you want to include your house in this trust?" I almost said no. Then I remembered Ava's offhand remarks over the years about how big houses are wasted on one person, how we should think about downsizing you before you fall and break something. "Yes," I said. "The house, too." An hour later, I walked out of the bank with a temporary debit card for my private account, a folder of documents, and an appointment with their lawyer for next Tuesday. My balance was safe. My home was safe. For the first time in months, I felt my shoulders drop from where they'd been living up near my ears. On the bus ride home, I watched the city slide past, the bakery with its chalkboard sign for scones, the hardware store George loved, the old elm tree in front of the library where Adam once climbed too high and froze. I thought about Ava. She'd be furious when she found out. Maybe she already was. The house was quiet when I came in. My purse was on the hall table, emptied of everything except a single crumpled receipt for milk. She'd even taken the coins. I set it aside. At 2, the phone rang. "Mom, hi," Ava said, voice bright and false. "I went ahead and paid some bills for you this morning, just to help out." "Thank you," I said, as evenly as I could. "Though I took care of my banking today, everything's in order." There was a pause. I could almost hear her blinking. "Oh? What do you mean?" "I mean," I said, "that I've arranged things so no one has to worry about my finances anymore. No one at all." Her voice cooled. "Mom, I wish you'd talk to me before making big decisions. It's not safe." "I know exactly what's safe for me," I interrupted, "and what isn't." Another pause, then a clipped, Fine. I just wanted to help. I'm sure you did, I said, and hung up before she could dress that sentence in guilt. I made tea after that, letting the leaves steep until the water went nearly black. Out the window, the neighbor's cat walked the fence, tail high, moving like it owned the day. I decided I would too. I didn't tell Adam what had happened. When he came by that Sunday afternoon, carrying a paper bag that smelled faintly of cinnamon rolls, I smiled like nothing was different. He sat at the kitchen table, stretching his legs out in that awkward way tall boys do, talking about a group project he was stuck on. It's like herding cats, he said, tearing his roll in half. Nobody answers messages until midnight, and then they want to meet at 7 a.m. I'm doing all the work. Sounds like you're learning an important life skill, I said, pouring his tea. Carrying more than your share. He grinned. Guess I get that from you. I didn't want to dampen his mood by telling him about Ava's little visit, or the withdrawals. That would come later, when it was time. For now, I wanted to keep our Sunday ritual intact. Pie, tea, and talk. Uninterrupted by the sort of ugliness that can harden a young man's heart too soon. Still, I found myself studying him when he laughed, thinking about how quickly time moves. I remembered the first day I babysat him alone, Ava dropping him off with a bag full of bottles and instructions that might as well have been written in a foreign language. He'd looked up at me from his blanket, utterly trusting. That kind of trust is a currency you can spend only once. After he left, the house felt quieter than usual. I wandered into the bedroom and opened the top drawer of my dresser. Under a stack of scarves lay the small brown envelope I'd brought home from the bank. I slid it out and opened it, looking again at the preliminary trust paperwork. My name. Adam's name. The house and funds clearly listed. It felt solid in my hands, like a lock clicking shut. That night, I dreamt of George. Not the sick George from the hospital bed, but the one with strong hands and a tan from working outside. In the dream, we were painting the kitchen. He was standing on a chair, telling me to keep the brush wet, while I pretended not to notice he'd already dripped green on the floor. I woke smiling, then felt that small, hollow ache when you realize the person you miss most is still gone. The next morning, I called the lawyer Mr. Calder had recommended. Her name was Ruth Myers, and her voice was brisk but kind. We made an appointment for Tuesday at 11 SAS. You'll need your identification, proof of property ownership, and any documents relating to your existing accounts, she said. I have them, I told her. After I hung up, I made myself a list. I've learned over the years that lists are armor. If you can see a task on paper, it loses some of its teeth. Around noon, Ava called again. Mom, I've been thinking, she began, in that careful tone she uses when she's trying to sound reasonable. Managing money is stressful. You've got enough on your plate without worrying about paying bills or keeping track of balances. Why don't we set up an automatic transfer? I can handle the household stuff, and you can just relax. I let her talk. It's funny how people reveal themselves when you don't interrupt. She went on about convenience, peace of mind, modern banking, all of it dressed up like a favor. When she finally paused, I said, Ava, you've made it very clear you think I'm not capable of handling my own affairs. That's not what I— It is, I said gently. But here's the thing. My affairs are mine, and they're taken care of. There's nothing for you to manage. The silence that followed was thick enough to chew. Well, she said finally, I just hope you don't regret shutting out the people who care about you. I smiled to myself. If anyone cares about me, Ava, they'll care without needing my bank card. After she hung up, I went back to the list on the table, underlining the next item. Make copies of all documents. The copier in the library down the street wheezed and groaned as it spat out the pages, but I left with 2 neat sets. One for me, one for the lawyer. On the walk home, I passed the bakery. Through the window, I saw a young woman with her head bent over a laptop, hair falling like a curtain. She looked so much like Ava at that age it startled me. Back then, she'd sit at the kitchen table with her homework, muttering about math problems, accepting a plate of cookies without looking up. Somewhere between then and now, the space between us had filled with ledgers and conditions. At home, I put the documents in the desk drawer, right under the address book. I made tea, sat by the window, and watched the late sun catch in the neighbor's wind chimes. They didn't make much sound, just a soft shift, like something deciding whether to speak. I decided I'd wait until after the lawyer visit to tell Adam. When I did, I'd make sure he understood exactly why. I heard the front door click open before the bell rang. Garrett never did have patience. "Mom, we have to talk," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an answer. His face was tight, jaw clenched. "Marissa's furious. Toby's stranded in the city without gas money. Do you understand what kind of mess you've made?" I stayed seated at the kitchen table, my hands folded over the teacup. "I understand perfectly. For once, I'm not the one cleaning it up." He tossed his keys onto the counter. "You can't just pull the rug out from under your own family. We have responsibilities, payments." "You have payments," I corrected. "I had them too, until yesterday. Now they're yours again." He paced. "This isn't like you. What happened? Is this about the dinner? Marissa said—" I cut him off. "Don't you dare soften it. You sent me that message. You told me your wife didn't want me there. You didn't even pick up the phone to apologize before showing up here with your list of needs." His voice dropped. It was a bad moment. I was trying to keep the peace. "By sacrificing me," I said, my voice quiet but sharp enough to stop him mid-step. "You've been keeping the peace for years that way, and I've been paying for it." He finally sat down, rubbing his forehead. "We're in over our heads. Without your help, we could lose the house. Do you want that on your conscience?" "No, Garrett. I don't want a house I paid for to be my leash. And if losing it is what it takes for you to remember how to stand on your own 2 feet, then maybe it's worth it." He stared at me for a long moment, then tried a different tactic, soft, almost pleading. "Mom, we're family." "We are," I said. "Which is why I hoped respect might come with it. But you've made it clear it doesn't." The kettle clicked off behind me. I poured the water, the steam rising between us like a curtain. "Tea?" I asked. He shook his head. "I can't believe you're doing this." "I can't believe it took me this long," I replied. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He drummed his fingers on the table and I sipped my tea, letting the silence settle the way it always does before a storm passes, or breaks. Finally, he pushed back his chair. "Fine. But when things fall apart, don't expect us to come running back here with smiles." "You've made your choice." I met his eyes. "Yes, Garrett. I finally have." He left without slamming the door, but the sound of his car pulling away was louder than any argument we'd ever had. The house was still again. I rinsed my cup, dried it, and set it back in its place. Through the window, the late afternoon light slanted across the garden, catching on the old roses James had planted decades ago. They'd bloomed this year without anyone tending them, stubborn and unapologetic. For the first time in years, I realized I wanted to be like those roses. By the next morning, the air in the house felt different. Still quiet, but not heavy. The kind of quiet that lets you think without feeling watched. I made coffee instead of tea, a small rebellion against my own habits. The phone sat face down on the counter. I hadn't turned it on since Garrett left. Let them stew in their confusion a little longer. I had an appointment at the bank at 10, and I intended to walk in without the weight of their voices in my ear. When I arrived, Mr. Calder greeted me in the lobby with a folder under his arm. "Morning, Mrs. Lane. We've prepared the trust paperwork for review." He led me into his office, and for the next hour we went through each page. The language was clean, no loopholes, no vague clauses. My house, my savings, and the small parcel of land George bought years ago were now secured in a trust with Adam as sole beneficiary. "This means," Mr. Calder said, tapping the last page, "that no one else can touch these assets without your explicit consent, even in emergencies." "Especially in emergencies," I said. "That's when people stop asking and start taking." He smiled faintly. "I'll file this with the legal department today. You'll have a certified copy next week." When I left the bank, I didn't head straight home. Instead, I walked down Main Street, stopping at the stationery shop. I bought a small lockbox, fresh envelopes, and a ledger book. At the pharmacy, I picked up my prescription and a tin of peppermints for Adam. It felt good to buy things without the ghost of someone else's wish list hanging over me. Back at the house, I set the lockbox on the kitchen table. Inside went the trust documents, the deed to the house, and the spare key to the safety deposit box. I labeled the envelopes in neat handwriting: utilities, property taxes, personal savings, and slid them into place. The phone buzzed from where I'd left it. I let it ring. When it stopped, the voicemail notification popped up. 7 new messages. I deleted them without listening. By mid-afternoon, I was sitting on the porch with a book when a familiar car rolled into the drive. Not Garrett's, Adam's. He got out, holding a grocery bag. "Grandma," he said, smiling like the day hadn't been waiting for bad news. "I brought that bread you like." The bakery had it fresh. I took the bag, inhaling the warm, yeasty smell. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he said simply, following me into the kitchen. We made sandwiches and ate at the table. He talked about his classes, about a friend's car that broke down, about the way the autumn air made the track smell like metal and leaves. Not once did he bring up Garrett or Ava. After he left, I realized that was the difference. Adam comes to me as I am, not as a source of something to take. The sun was setting when I finally turned the phone on. A new message appeared almost immediately. From Ava. "I can't believe you're doing this to your own daughter. We'll see about getting the bank to reverse it." I stared at it for a moment, then typed back, "They won't, and you should stop trying." A few minutes later, she replied, "You're making a mistake you'll regret." I locked the screen and set the phone down. Some mistakes, I thought, are worth making, especially when they're not mistakes at all. That night, I slept with the lockbox on the dresser beside my bed. It wasn't the money that comforted me. It was the fact that for the first time in years, I knew it was safe, and so was I. It was Tuesday when I walked into Ruth Meyer's office. Her desk was stacked with neat piles of paper, each bound with a clip, and the faint smell of lemon polish hung in the air. She stood as I entered, a small woman in her 60s, with hair cropped close to her head and eyes that didn't waste time. "Mrs. Lane, Mr. Calder filled me in," she said, gesturing to the chair across from hers. "I understand we're finalizing your trust today." "Yes," I said, settling in. "And I want it absolutely secure. No amendments without my say-so." She smiled slightly. "That's the whole point of a trust. But we'll add a provision that requires your physical signature for any changes, witnessed by a notary. No phone calls, no power of attorney overrides." We went through every detail: my house, my savings, the small parcel of land George had held onto for decades. She explained how the trust would bypass probate, how it would stand even if someone tried to challenge it. By the time I left her office, the documents were signed and stamped. Adam's name sat neatly on the beneficiary line, no room for confusion. I walked home slowly, taking the long way past the park. Children shrieked from the swings, dogs chased each other across the grass, and a man sat on a bench feeding breadcrumbs to pigeons that barely bothered to move. The world looked the same as yesterday, but I felt different, lighter, but also anchored. When I got home, the answering machine light was blinking. 5 new messages. I played them on speaker while I put away my coat. First was Ava, her voice tight. "Mom, you can't just lock me out like this. It's not safe. You're being manipulated by someone at the bank. Call me back." Then Garrett. "This is ridiculous. You're cutting off your own family. Do you want us to stop coming around? Because that's where this is headed." Another from Ava. "I've spoken to a lawyer friend. We can challenge this if we have to. You're not thinking clearly." The fourth was silent for a moment before a man's voice, her husband, came on. "Margaret, this isn't right. You need to reconsider." The last one was Ava again, sharper this time. "If you don't call me, I'm coming over." I erased them all. That evening, as I was chopping vegetables for soup, I saw headlights sweep across the living room wall. A knock followed, hard enough to rattle the glass in the door. I opened it to find Ava standing there, coat unbuttoned, hair mussed from the wind. Her eyes went straight past me, scanning the room like she was looking for evidence. "We need to talk," she said, stepping inside without waiting. "No," I said. "You need to listen." She stopped, mid-step. "Excuse me?" "I know why you came last week. I know about the withdrawals, and I know you've been calling the bank." Her face flushed. "I was trying to keep things from falling apart. You're 76, Mom. And I'm still in charge of my own life," I cut in. "That hasn't changed." She took a step closer, lowering her voice like we were conspiring. "This isn't about control. It's about safety. What if something happens to you?" "How do we handle things then?" "You'll handle it when it happens," I said. "Not before. Not while I'm here, breathing, capable and perfectly able to write my own checks." Her mouth tightened. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "I'm making it as hard as it should be," I replied. We stood there, the space between us taut as wire. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "These are the bills you've been ignoring. If you won't let me manage things, at least let me pay them." I didn't move to take it. "Leave them on the table. I'll decide what to do with them." She set it down like it was a dare. "Don't say I didn't try." Then she turned, yanked the door open, and left. The wind rushed in for a moment before the house was quiet again. I stood there, looking at the folder. Eventually, I slid it into the lockbox without opening it. Some things could wait. For 2 days after Ava's visit, the house was undisturbed. No calls, no knocks, No sudden headlights sweeping across the front room. It was almost enough to make me believe she'd given up. Almost. On the third day, I opened the mailbox and found 3 envelopes. The first was my electricity bill. The second was a postcard from an old friend in Maine. The third was a glossy flyer from a financial planning firm with Ava's name scrawled on a sticky note. Thought this might help you get organized. I tossed the flyer in the bin and set the postcard on the fridge with a magnet. The electricity bill went into my utilities envelope in the lockbox. That afternoon, the phone rang. I let the machine take it. "Hi, Grandma?" Adam's voice came through, warm as always. "Mom said you might need a ride to the grocery store. I'm free this weekend if you want company." I picked up then. "Adam, I appreciate it, but I can get there myself. And you don't have to run errands for me because your mother says so." He hesitated. "She just said she's worried." I laughed softly. "She's worried about the wrong things. But thank you for calling me directly." We chatted a few minutes longer about his classes, his roommate's terrible cooking, before hanging up. I couldn't decide if Ava had sent him as a spy or if he genuinely wanted to help. Probably both. The next morning, I noticed my neighbor, Mrs. Ortega, waving from her porch. She came over with a container of tamales and a puzzled look. "Your daughter called me yesterday," she said, lowering her voice. "She asked if I'd check in on you more often. Make sure you're managing." I could feel the heat rising in my face. Did she now? "I told her you've been managing just fine since I moved in 10 years ago," Mrs. Ortega said, setting the tamales on the counter. "But I thought you should know." I thanked her, but when she left, I sat at the table for a long while. It wasn't the fact that Ava was talking about me, it was who she was talking to. Quiet interference, planting seeds of doubt in other people's minds. By evening, I'd had enough. I called Ava. "I hear you've been asking the neighbors to keep an eye on me," I said. There was a pause, then her voice went smooth. "I just want to make sure you're safe." "What's wrong with that?" "What's wrong is doing it behind my back," I said. "If you have concerns, speak to me, not everyone else in town." "I didn't think you'd listen," she said flatly. "That's because what you're selling isn't worth buying," I replied. She sighed, the kind of sigh people use when they want to sound put upon. "I'm trying, Mom. You make it impossible." "You're not trying to help," I said. "You're trying to get back something you lost, and you won't." I hung up before she could answer. That night, I made myself a plate of Mrs. Ortega's tamales and ate them slowly, the spice warming my mouth. Outside, the street was quiet, just the occasional hum of a passing car. In the lockbox, the folder of bills Ava had left still sat untouched. I thought about shredding it, but decided against it. Sometimes, letting something sit is more powerful than throwing it away. It reminds you every day of the thing you chose not to accept. Before bed, I wrote Adam a short note. Nothing about the bank or the trust, just an invitation for pie on Sunday. I figured it was time to start talking to him about the things that matter before someone else tries to speak for me. Sunday came with the smell of rain in the air. I'd just taken the pie out of the oven when I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel drive. 2 doors slammed, too sharp to be Adam. When I opened the front door, Ava was there, chin set, eyes narrowed. Behind her stood her husband, Michael, in his usual navy jacket, hands shoved deep in his pockets like he was keeping them from interfering. "We're coming in," Ava said, brushing past me without waiting for a reply. Michael followed, quieter, but his eyes were busy. scanning the walls, the table, the desk in the corner. I closed the door. "What's this about?" "You know what it's about," she said, turning to face me. "You've made decisions that affect the whole family without talking to anyone. You've frozen me out, and for what? To make some kind of point?" I stayed by the door. "No, to protect what's mine." "That's selfish, Mom," she shot back. "Everything you have came from this family. We've supported you." I cut her off. "You've taken from me, Ava. That's different." Michael stepped forward then, voice low but firm. "Look, Margaret, no one's accusing you of being irresponsible. But the way things are set up now, it's impractical. If something happens to you, something will happen to me one day," I said. "That's how life works. But until then, I'll be the one deciding what happens to my home and my accounts." Ava crossed her arms. "You're acting like we're strangers trying to rob you. We're your family." "Family doesn't mean unquestioned access," I said. "Family means trust, and you broke that when you took my purse and my card without asking." Her mouth tightened. "You're exaggerating." "Am I?" I asked. "The bank records say otherwise." Michael tried a different tack. "Maybe we can compromise. Keep Ava on the account for emergencies, but—" I shook my head. "There's no compromise on boundaries. Once they're crossed, the only fix is to rebuild them higher." Ava's voice rose. "Do you even hear yourself? This is insane. You've been influenced by that banker, that lawyer." "I've been influenced by you," I said evenly. "By watching exactly how far you'll go if I let you." The silence after that was heavy. Ava's gaze darted to the folder on the side table, the one she'd left here 2 weeks ago. "Have you even looked at those bills?" she demanded. "They're where they belong," I said. "In my keeping, not yours." She stepped toward the table. I moved before she could reach it, placing myself in her path. "Don't," I said. Something in my tone must have reached her. She stopped. Michael shifted his weight. "Ava, let's go." She looked at him, then back at me. "You're going to regret this," she said. Her voice wasn't loud anymore, but it was colder. "Maybe," I said. "But it will be my regret to live with, not yours." They left together, the door clicking shut behind them. Through the front window, I watched their car back out too fast, gravel spitting from the tires. The house felt warmer without them in it, as if their absence let the air settle again. I sat at the kitchen table with a slice of pie, the crust still warm, the filling sweet. Halfway through, Adam's car pulled up. He came in smiling, holding a carton of ice cream. "Perfect timing," he said, seeing the pie. We ate together, talking about nothing urgent, the way I like it. But in the back of my mind, I knew this wasn't over. Ava wasn't the type to walk away quietly. After Adam left, I washed the dishes and dried them one by one, feeling the familiar rhythm calm me. Then I went to the lockbox, checked that everything was still in place, and closed it with a satisfying click. Some people fight battles loudly. I've learned to win mine quietly, one locked door at a time. 2 days passed without a word from Ava. That should have been a relief, but it felt more like the air before a storm, still but charged. I busied myself with small things, washing the curtains, trimming the dead blooms from the roses, baking a loaf of bread I didn't really need. On Thursday morning, the phone rang. The caller ID showed her name, and I let it go to the machine. Her voice floated through the speaker, softer this time, almost trembling. "Mom, I hate that we're fighting. I've been thinking a lot about Dad, about how he wouldn't want us like this. We're family. I miss just sitting and talking with you. Can we meet for lunch? My treat. I could hear the catch in her throat, the pause she left at the end for me to pick up. I didn't. An hour later, there was another message. I know I messed up. I was just trying to help, even if it didn't come out right. Please don't shut me out. I love you. It would have been easier to believe if she hadn't slipped a flyer for a financial firm into my mailbox last week. That evening, she called again, and this time I answered. Hello, Ava. Her voice brightened instantly. Mom. Thank you for picking up. I've been so worried about you. I'm fine, I said. I don't think you are, she said gently. You're alone in that big house, managing all those bills, keeping track of everything. It's a lot, even for someone younger. I just want to make things easier for you. I let her talk, noting how she'd traded the sharp edges for soft ones, replacing demands with concern. Easier for me or for you? I asked when she paused. For both of us, she said quickly. Think about it. If I handled the accounts, you wouldn't have to stress over due dates or paperwork. You could just enjoy your time. I could take you out more. We could travel. Travel, I said, smiling to myself. And who would be paying for that? She laughed lightly. Well, between us, it wouldn't matter. It's all the same money, Mom. Family money. That's where you're wrong, I said. It's mine. And I'll decide where it goes. The warmth drained from her voice. Why are you being so stubborn? Because stubbornness is what's left when trust runs out, I said. She was quiet for a moment, then tried again. I don't want to fight. Just, please think about it. I'll drop by tomorrow with lunch. We can talk in person. No, I said, firm. If you want to see me, you can come on Sunday. Adam's coming too, and we will not be discussing my finances. There was a pause. Fine, she said, and the call ended. When Sunday came, she arrived with a salad in a plastic container, her smile bright but tight. Adam was already there, helping me set the table. The three of us ate together, the conversation sticking to safe topics: weather, Adam's classes, the cat Mrs. Ortega had adopted. But every so often, I'd catch Ava glancing at the desk in the corner, where my lockbox sat under a stack of newspapers. She never asked, and I never offered. After lunch, Adam helped me wash the dishes while Ava wandered into the living room. I could hear her moving around, too quiet to be casual. When I went in, she was standing by the bookshelf, running her finger along the spines. Looking for something? I asked. She smiled, but her eyes slid toward the desk. Just admiring how organized you are. I walked past her, resting my hand on the desk lid. Everything important is where it belongs, I said. She gave a little shrug, as if to say she hadn't been caught, and went to sit on the couch. When they left, I moved the lockbox into my bedroom closet, just in case. That night, I thought about how Ava's approach had shifted, how she'd traded force for sugar, but the goal was the same. Some people change tactics when a door won't open. Others keep pushing the same one, just more quietly. Ava, I realized, was doing both, and I'd have to be ready. It was late afternoon when the call came. I was in the garden, clipping back the lavender, when the phone rang inside. By the time I reached it, Ava's voice was already spilling into the room through the answering machine. I don't understand you anymore, Mom, she said, a tremor in her words. I've done nothing but try to help, and you treat me like a thief. Do you know how that feels? To have your own mother think the worst of you? I stood by the counter, listening. Garrett and I have been talking, she went on. He thinks you've been influenced by people who don't have your best interests at heart. This isn't like you. You used to trust me. I just want things to be the way they were." The machine clicked off. I didn't call back. Instead, I made tea and took it to the porch. I knew this game, turning the story inside out, making herself the wounded party. It had worked before, on others. Not on me, not anymore. The next morning, she showed up unannounced. No knock this time, just the front door swinging open and her voice calling. "Mom? We need to talk." I met her in the hallway. "You need to call before coming over," I said. She ignored that. "I can't sleep. I'm worried sick about you. You've shut me out of everything. Do you have any idea what that's doing to me?" Her voice cracked, just enough to make it sound real. She stepped closer, her hands clasped in front of her like she was praying. "I don't want us to end up estranged. I don't want to explain to Adam why you won't see me anymore. Is that what you want?" I studied her face, looking for the little tells. Eyes darting, fingers tightening. "What I want," I said slowly, "is for you to respect my boundaries, that's all. The rest is in your hands." "That's not fair," she said. "Boundaries? We're family. We share. We help each other." "Help is offered, Ava, not taken," I said. She shook her head, her lip trembling. "You make it sound like I've done something terrible. I was trying to protect you. You're not as sharp as you used to be." I held up my hand. "Stop there." My voice was calm, but it had that edge I reserve for moments when I won't be moved. "Do not confuse age with weakness. I know exactly what I'm doing." Her eyes filled, but I'd seen those tears before. They could come and go on cue. "I'm your daughter," she said, softer now. "If you can't trust me, who can you trust?" "Myself," I said simply. For a moment, the only sound was the clock in the kitchen. Then she turned away, wiping at her cheek. "Fine. Keep pushing me out. Don't come to me when you need something." "I won't," I said. She froze for half a second, maybe expecting me to soften. When I didn't, she left without another word, the door closing harder than it needed to. The house settled back into its quiet. I went to the window and watched her car pull away, the taillights bright against the afternoon haze. Later, I found Adam's number in my address book and called him. "Pie on Sunday," I said when he answered. "Bring your appetite." He laughed. "Always." I didn't mention Ava's visit, but I knew the time was coming when I'd have to tell him the whole truth, not just for his sake, but so there would be one person in the family who knew exactly how the line had been drawn. That evening, I put the kettle on again. Some people use sugar to sweeten the bitter. I prefer to taste it plain. It reminds me why I don't want it in my cup. Sunday came with a clear blue sky, the kind that makes you want to open all the windows. I had the pie cooling on the counter when Adam arrived, carrying a brown paper bag that smelled faintly of coffee beans. "Figured you could use a refill," he said, setting it on the table. We sat down with our plates, and for a while, we just talked about ordinary things. His midterms, a concert he'd gone to, the neighbor's new dog that barked at everything but birds. But the longer we sat, the more I felt that pull in my chest. It was time. "Adam," I said, setting my fork down, "I need to tell you something, and I'm asking you to just listen until I'm done." His brows drew together. "Okay." I told him everything. Not the softened version, not the polite omissions, everything. About Ava coming here and taking my purse, about the withdrawals from the joint account, about the bank, the trust, the visits and the calls. He didn't interrupt, but I could see his jaw tightening, his shoulders going rigid. When I finished, he let out a slow breath. I knew something was going on, he said quietly. She's been weird. Asking me questions about when I visit you, if you've been forgetful, stuff like that. I nodded. She's trying to build a case. The more people she can get to agree with her, the more she thinks she can push her way back in. Adam rubbed the back of his neck. That's messed up. I mean, she's my mom, but she's also an adult who makes her own choices, I said. And she's made them. I need you to understand why I've done what I've done, so that if she tries to tell you a different story, you'll know the truth. He looked at me for a long moment. I believe you, and I'm glad you told me. Relief loosened something in my chest. Thank you. I didn't want you caught in the middle without knowing it. I'm already in the middle, he said, a wry smile tugging at his mouth. But I can handle it. We finished our pie in comfortable silence. Afterward, Adam helped me wash the dishes. His movements were careful, deliberate, like he was thinking through something. When he dried the last plate, he turned to me. If she tries anything, comes here, calls, whatever, you tell me, okay? I'm not going to let her steamroll you. I can handle myself, I said, but I smiled. Still, it's nice to know you're in my corner. He grinned. Always. After he left, I stood for a moment in the doorway, watching him drive away. There was a lightness in me I hadn't felt in weeks. Not because the situation was fixed, but because I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. That night, I took the lockbox from the closet and checked it again. Everything was in place. I slipped a note inside, just a simple line in my handwriting. Adam knows. I don't know why I did it. Maybe as a reminder to myself that the truth has already been passed to someone who will protect it. Maybe so that, if anyone ever tried to twist the story after I'm gone, there would be a record that the truth wasn't a secret. The wind picked up outside, rattling the branches against the windows. I set the lockbox back in the closet, closed the door, and stood for a moment, listening to the house settle around me. Ava could call. She could visit. She could keep trying to bend the truth until it suited her. But now there was one person in the family who knew every detail, and he wasn't going to be swayed by guilt or charm. And that, I thought, might be the thing she fears most. It was 3 days later when I heard the tires on the gravel again. Heavy steps up the walkway. This time, Ava didn't come alone. Michael was with her, his jacket zipped high against the wind, his expression unreadable. I opened the door just enough to stand in the gap. What do you want? Ava smiled tightly. We're here to talk, Mom, not to argue. That would be a first, I said, but I stepped aside. They came into the living room, Ava sitting on the couch like she was claiming territory. Michael stayed standing, his hands in his pockets. She started with a sigh, the kind people use when they're about to explain something to a child. This has gone far enough. You've made decisions based on paranoia, and you've cut me out without cause. That's not fair to me, or to the family. The family, I repeated, meaning you. Michael stepped in, voice even. We're not here to fight. We just want to make sure things are handled properly. This trust you set up is legal, binding, and not your concern, I said. Ava's eyes narrowed. It's my concern if you're being manipulated. That banker and that lawyer have filled your head with nonsense. They've filled it with paperwork that protects me, I said, from anyone who thinks my age is an excuse to take over. Michael's voice sharpened. You know we'd never hurt you. I looked at him. Hurt doesn't always come from a fist, Michael. Sometimes it comes from a pen or a withdrawal slip. Ava's jaw clenched. "You're making me sound like a criminal. I'm your daughter." "And I'm your mother," I said, "which means I'm not here to be managed by you. I'm here to live my life until I can't anymore, and I'll decide when that time comes." She glanced toward the corner where my desk sat. I saw her eyes flick to the stack of newspapers that covered the lockbox. I didn't move, but I felt my whole body go still. Michael shifted, stepping toward the desk as if to lean against it. "We're not asking for much. You're asking for everything," I said, my voice low now. "And I've told you the answer." Ava stood suddenly, her face flushing. "This is ridiculous. You've chosen Adam over me. You've made it clear who you trust, and it's not your own daughter." "I've chosen the person who doesn't treat me like a vault to be cracked," I said. Michael stepped forward again. "We'll leave, but think about what you're doing. Once you're gone, all of this will cause nothing but resentment. Is that what you want your legacy to be?" "My legacy," I said, "will be knowing I kept control of my life until the end. Resentment is someone else's problem." Ava's voice dropped, almost to a whisper. "You'll regret this, Mom." I met her eyes. I've regretted being too generous. I've never regretted being careful. The silence that followed was thick. Finally, Michael put a hand on her arm, guiding her toward the door. She didn't look back. When they were gone, I locked the door and went to the window. Their car sat at the end of the drive for a long moment before finally turning onto the road. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, letting the steam rise between my hands. I thought about how they'd come here today, not to convince me, but to pressure me together, as if strength in numbers would make me fold. But they'd left with nothing. Not my money, not my house, not even a hint of doubt in my mind. The following Tuesday, I took the bus into town for my final meeting with Ruth Myers. The air was crisp enough to make my knuckles ache, but I welcomed the sting. It reminded me I was still moving, still making my own way. Ruth's office was warm and smelled faintly of paper and coffee. She greeted me with a firm handshake and a smile that didn't waste itself on pleasantries. "Everything's ready," she said, leading me to the conference table. A neat stack of documents waited there, each with a yellow tab marking where I needed to sign. "This," she said, tapping the first page, "is the finalized trust agreement. It lists your home, your savings, and the parcel of land as assets, with Adam Lane as sole beneficiary. It's airtight. No one, not even a family member, can override it without your consent." I took the pen she handed me. The tip moved smoothly across the paper, my name flowing into the space where it belonged. With each signature, I felt the knots in my shoulders loosen a little more. We moved on to the deed transfer, placing the house into the trust. "This will prevent probate," Ruth explained. "When the time comes, Adam will inherit directly, without delay or interference." I signed again, my hand steady. When the last page was complete, Ruth gathered the stack and placed it into a large manila envelope. "You'll get certified copies within the week. The originals will be stored securely, and I recommend you keep one copy in your lockbox at home." "I will," I said. She leaned back in her chair. "You know, most people your age come in here with their children. Sometimes the children speak more than the client does. You've done this on your own, start to finish. I've learned that if you want your voice heard, you have to be the one speaking," I said. Ruth smiled. Wise words. When I left her office, the sun was high enough to cast long shadows down Main Street. I decided to walk instead of taking the bus right away. I stopped at the bakery for a loaf of sourdough and a small coffee. The girl behind the counter knew me by name and slipped a cinnamon bun into the bag on the house. By the time I reached the bus stop, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because I thought Ava would stop trying, she wouldn't, but because the matter was no longer open for debate. The papers were signed, sealed, and filed. It was done. Back home, I made myself a simple lunch and sat at the kitchen table with the lockbox in front of me. I unlocked it, placed the manila envelope inside, and closed it with a firm click. Then I slid the box back into the closet under a folded quilt. The phone rang once, then twice, before the machine picked up. Ava's voice filled the kitchen again, smooth and practiced. "Mom, I heard you've been back to the lawyer. I wish you'd told me. We could have gone together, figured this out as a family." I didn't answer. She went on, her tone dipping into something almost tender. "I know you think I'm after your money. That's not true. I just want to make sure you're safe. We can still fix this. Call me." The message ended. I sat for a moment, sipping my tea, thinking about how much time she must spend rehearsing these words. Later that evening, Adam called. "How did it go?" he asked. "Done," I said. "It's all in writing now." "That's good," he said, relief in his voice. "I'm glad you didn't wait." "So am I," I replied. We talked a little longer, mostly about the cinnamon bun I'd saved for him. When we hung up, I felt the quiet of the house wrap around me. Not the heavy quiet of being watched or judged, but the gentle kind that comes when you know your decisions are your own. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night without waking to the sound of imagined footsteps. A week passed without storms. I weeded the beans, ironed a pile of pillowcases, sent Adam home with the cinnamon bun and a jar of plum jam. The phone rang often, then less. Silence, I've learned, is a kind of apology. Never spoken, but offered by those who run out of arguments. On Thursday, the bank called. A careful young voice informed me someone had tried to use an old authorization at a branch across town. It was declined, flagged, documented. Would I like to speak to the manager? I said no, thank you. I had already spoken with myself, and that conversation mattered most. By Saturday, the sky had cleared into the color of a good enamel bowl. I baked a small chicken, set the table for one, and opened the windows. The knock came just before 4. I knew it was Ava by the pause between taps, the tiny intake of breath she always made before stepping into a room. I opened the door but didn't move aside. She held a bouquet from the supermarket, tulips that were past their prime, stems sweating inside cloudy water. "I don't know how to stand here," she said, voice tight. "As your daughter? As a stranger?" "I brought flowers." "You can stand as you are," I said. "The vase is full. Say what you came to say." "I came to return this." She pulled my old leather purse from her tote and set it gently on the hall table, as if it were a sleeping thing. "It's yours. It always was." She swallowed. I was scared. Money makes people do stupid things. I thought if I didn't act, you'd be taken advantage of. And then, I became what I said I feared. She looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders hunched like a girl caught in the rain. "I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for a way back." I let the words sit between us. The purse was scuffed along the corners. The zipper, the one she once tugged without asking, glinted in the light. "A way back is not a loop," I said. "It's a road with markers. If you want to walk it, you'll know you're on it by how you behave when no one's watching." "I don't know what that means." "It means you call before you come. You don't raise your voice in my house. You don't touch my mail, my keys, my purse. You don't speak about my mind as if I'm not in the room. We can have tea on Sundays. We can talk about the garden. We cannot talk about my accounts." Her eyes lifted. "And Adam is off limits. He is not your messenger, and he will not be pulled into sides. If you have words for me, use your own mouth." Ava nodded once, then again. "I can do that," she said. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't sound like she was performing. "I don't want to be the woman who barged in and grabbed her mother's life because she was afraid of losing her own." "You already were," I said. "But you don't have to keep being her." We stood in the hallway, two women in their own weather. Finally, she glanced at the purse again. "There's nothing missing," she whispered, as if confessing to the air. I checked. Then a thin smile, self-mocking. "Old habit." "Old habits can retire," I said. She asked if she could hug me. I told her not today, and watched the shame and relief fight across her face. Boundaries bruise when they're new. Later, they hold you up. When she left, I put the flowers in the sink and my purse on the top shelf of the closet. I made tea, the good kind Adam brings, and carried my cup to the porch. The street breathed. Children on bicycles, a dog with more bark than sense, Mr. Keegan watering tomatoes like he expected an applause. After a while, Adam arrived. I had called him earlier to say nothing urgent, just pie tomorrow if he was free. He sat on the step below mine, long legs sprawled, the easy way of youth. "She come by?" he asked. "She did. We have an understanding." He nodded, not pressing for details. That boy knows the difference between curiosity and care. We talked about his exam, the old Ford he wants to nurse through another year, the lake he might drive to in summer. When he left, he kissed my cheek and said, "Proud of you." The words landed where years of noise could not. As the light faded, I wrote 2 notes. The first I tucked into the lockbox with the documents. Home placed in trust. Choices made clear. Love does not require proof of funds. The second I left in the purse on the shelf. If you are opening this without asking, close it. Then try again with the doorbell. I washed the dinner plate, turned the key in the door, and stood in the quiet house that had sheltered my best and worst days. I am not a martyr or a judge. I am an old woman who has finally learned that dignity is not a gift people hand you when they are moved enough. It is a line you draw and hold, even when your hand shakes. I loved my daughter when she crossed it. I will love her if she learns to see it. And if she doesn't, I will still sleep well, because I chose myself without shouting. And I did not let fear dress itself up as care and take my name. Tomorrow there will be coffee and pie, a phone that rings less often, a garden that insists on growing. If peace has a sound, it is the creak of a clean floor and a kettle coming slowly to boil. If any part of this story felt familiar, tell me your line, the one you drew and held. Share your thoughts below and follow for more quiet victories from women who refuse to disappear.